Hello, everybody. I'm sorry for the delay. Happy to have everybody in with me. Okay, nice. Now I see all of my co-panelists tuning in, and it makes me feel a little bit more secure and at home that we haven't lost anybody in the process. So first of all, let me give you all a warm welcome for joining the conference. My name is Iva Jankovic Uzunovski. I'm the CEO of betahausX, and I'm super excited for the opportunity to be able to host this panel with three amazing women on board, actually. But maybe before we get it full going, I would just like to give a big warm shout out to Karina and her team from the Start Me Up Hong Kong Summit Festival for this opportunity to be able to connect globally within the current times. Maybe to start introducing the topic of the day, to start with the tag of the overall conference with making impact. And I feel this is something that all of us within the panel of right now share in common and or have our hearts in the right place to beat for that. And especially from my side, from the betahausX, just to quickly share who we are. This is a very important statement of not just making impact, but providing value, as we are a community-driven space and an ecosystem primarily here in Europe with some connections globally where we help design and build purpose-driven ecosystems. And this is exactly where I would love to bridge to the topic of today. So as I mentioned, I have three amazing female panelists, which I'm really excited about, to help discover the topic of the European ecosystem and what is it needing for the B2B, let's say, innovative companies, organizations to bridge within this diverse European ecosystem. So, but enough about me and the overarching topic. Maybe first, let's get to know who else do we have within the room. So I would love to start by introducing each of the panelists. So maybe to start with the startup in the room. So we have Marina Ekroos. She's co-founder and CEO of Frameright. Marina, can you hear me? And would you mind giving me that juicy elevator pitch I know you have polished in the room?
Yes. So we fix how images on the internet work. We use embedded metadata and AI to make sure that the important parts of pictures are shown correctly on channels, devices, and different sizes of screens and so on.
Nice, perfect, very well polished.
Yeah, we impact visual culture. That's my mission.
Love it. We're going to dive a little bit deeper on also where your company has been established and how you use certain ecosystem within Europe during the questions. So this was like perfect amount of information. Maybe to move forward, I have two other more, let's say, from a community driving forces. Maybe first one, Elena Poughia. I'm not sure if I pronounced your last name correctly. I'm sorry if I don't. CEO and founder of Data Natives and Data Economy, a community and ecosystem focusing on big data. Elena, can you tell us, let's say, a few sentences about Data Natives and Data Economy?
I think you did a great job actually introducing the natives, but yes, my last name, it's a difficult one to pronounce, so it's Poughia, but thanks very much for trying. It's something between Puglia in Italy and some unknown word. It doesn't mean, well, it means something in Greece where I'm from, but it's very difficult for people to know what it means. Yeah, so data natives in an economy, as you put it, it's a community and an ecosystem. We really focus on AI and data science and machine learning. So Marina, that can be something interesting for you as well. And we've got a community of data scientists worldwide, more than 80,000. They're spread around 50 key tech capitals, and we engage with them in different ways, now predominantly online, through hackathons, online conferences and offline conferences. We did data natives every year for the last 5 years. Now we're introducing Data Natives Unlimited, and we also have a media platform called Data Economy, where we put out news, articles, opinion pieces, research around these topics.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. Last but not least, Oleksandra, or short Alex Kovbasko, Director of Enpact. Also a big community with a strong base in Europe, but also present worldwide, focusing maybe more on empowering entrepreneurship. Alex, could you tell us a little bit about Enpact and yourself?
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And at Enpact, we are working with entrepreneurs in emerging markets. We have our presence in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, right now establishing an office in Indonesia and working on expanding to Mexico with the headquarters in Berlin. So Europe is the home turf, and we work not only with the entrepreneurs directly on all stages, but also with the ecosystems and ecosystem players.
Perfect, love it, and a great bridge. I have to say, I'm very excited for this whole group that kind of grew organically, how we managed to source the panelists for this talk, not just as we're all female representatives. Usually I feel like organizations are trying hard to pack those female numbers or seats, but also because we are actually all foreigners, more or less, based in Berlin or using Berlin for our organization or maybe even for a private life. So maybe with that, I would love to start with our first sort of, let's say, not really a question, but let's say a subtopic I would love to dive a little bit deeper into. But perhaps before I introduce that, for any participants or listeners out there worldwide, if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or to post the question in the Q&A or in the chat function, and we'll make sure to get to it either during the discussion or perhaps at the end of it in case it's not fitting. Great. So maybe to start with, to understand the European ecosystem. So as this conference is global, not all of the listeners might be familiar with the Europe as a whole. And as you could already hear from the introductions, we are all actually based in Berlin at the moment, at least. But our communities or our organizations are somewhat present in Europe and definitely also globally further on. So perhaps, Marina, I would love to start with you to understand how have you as a founder of Frameright, how has Frameright been using and understanding Berlin as the place for your startup to be, and what are the key advantages that you see within the space for you?
So for us, so we are from Finland, and we founded the company in Finland, and then we moved to Germany. We went first to Hamburg, and we did an acceleration program over there. But now we are in Berlin because it makes just a lot of sense to be here in kind of as an international startup. Here are better connections to other places and so on. So yeah, what was the question again exactly? So what about Berlin?
That's a very fair question you just gave back to me. You didn't give us exact question. Yeah, very broad, so very fair.
I can talk a lot.
Basically, but what I would like perhaps our participants to get to know a little bit more in what has been your experience with Frameright relocating to Berlin. Why have you relocated to Berlin, and what were the key advantages that you discovered here compared to, for example, other ecosystems you're in?
Yeah, so for us being from Finland, Germany is Central Europe for us. So it brings us closer to then also other countries and other places and also our customers and leads are a lot of them are in Germany, and even though they wouldn't be exactly in Berlin, it makes a nice gesture to them that we are present here. Mm-hmm. And also because of European Union, it's super easy to make, and Schengen is easy to make this kind of a soft relocation. So we are also kind of not really fully here, but we are here. Like I am here. My co-founder is in Finland.
Nice. And maybe actually just to understand, so in which markets predominantly would you say Frameright is currently present within Europe?
Germany is our main, and now we are doing a step also towards Spain, actually. Now,
nice.
Yes.
Cool, very exciting. Thank you for sharing. Maybe to move with that same frame of questions, Elena, to you, and for the data natives, you guys host events all around from what we know, and you are very present everywhere. But your base is Berlin as well. Is that correct, right?
Yes, that's true, yes.
Perfect. So maybe you can share from your experience of also managing sort of a global community from Berlin. What has been your experience so far, and what have been the key advantages that you've seen by positioning or having your base in Berlin for that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because when you are managing actually international community, you have to take into consideration the different cultural traits of each of the locations. So for example, like when you're organizing a meetup in Paris, let's say, people are usually have to 1 hour late. When you are in Berlin, like things are very much, well, even in Berlin, things are very much in order because we're still in Germany. Yeah, I would say the reason why we're in Berlin is because Berlin is such a hub. And it really combines a lot of the right elements for the community for us, but also I think personally. So it's an affordable enough place to actually have everything that you want. There's an abundance of tech talent, and a lot of interesting people are relocating here because it combines like a really nice lifestyle with all the perks of, you know, culture and education and connection to like a lot of interesting people. And I would say that have noticed that essentially a lot of VCs are also moving here and looking for startups here. So for us, and I think now more and more with online webinars and events, it makes it even more possible to connect with everybody that we have in the global ecosystem. But for us, it made the most sense to be here for data science as a topic, for what kind of people we are approaching and connecting with. And I do think that when it comes to Europe right now, Berlin is really vibrating with opportunities and a very interesting hub to be at.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And maybe a follow-up question to you, as you guys are a holder of an ecosystem that is really vertical focused. You know, as you already mentioned, you obviously need this strong access to certain talent, or you're able to exist where there's buzz around that, or good grounds for it. Do you think that Berlin has always been that strong within your vertical, or is this something that you've seen a spike in the last years?
That's a good question. I think like generally Berlin, apart from the fact that it's very interesting tech hub right now, it's the one that has been rapidly growing. So I don't think that it has always been like that, but it has become what it is now, right? So I moved about 6 years ago and the ecosystem was not as strong. And I would still say that right now is the time that I really see the synergies between different organizations or community builders, or different even different how do you say it, accelerators and incubators. There's more synergies now between us that we're building this stronger ecosystem. But yeah, the thing with Berlin specifically is also strategically the location is close to other similar hubs. So when it comes to tech talent, for example, Poland is very strong as well, Hungary, Romania. So because we are in the middle, we do have access to a lot of interesting other hubs. So I think it's also the geographical position that makes it very interesting, but for sure, like it's really growing and it will continue growing. It has the potential to even become stronger.
Mm-hmm. I full on agree, but I'm also a diehard Berliner. Converted. Perfect. Thank you for elaborating further on that. Alex, maybe to proceed with you, as you guys are truly present everywhere and also have this diversity of different stages of the ecosystem you're present, especially going from ones that might not even exist or might be more in infant stages, and then perhaps comparing it to Berlin. How's it been from your experience and from Enpact experience, perceiving Berlin and using Berlin as the base? And further on, what would you say are the key advantages from your community's perspective?
I would say Berlin is such an international melting pot that wherever you go, you can find locally already in Berlin the experts that can give you a hint about the next market you're going to be working with. And this has been reflected in the team. Enpact is a very diverse team internally, but also I think this gives a lot of inspiration for us to work and expand ourselves. And I can only imagine what it can do to a startup that, for example, if you're coming from Hong Kong or from Singapore, you can find fellow Singaporeans already in the city and then hire a Frenchman or an Italian, and they will help you expand within the Europe as such. We're working very closely with the city of Berlin on the initiative called Asia Berlin. And here we are trying to build up the ecosystem and connect those who are already having strong ties to Asian countries, and then facilitate this growth for any incoming company, or the other way around if the Berlin company wants to expand to Asia.
Nice. Very nice about the Asia Berlin. I actually heard a lot about the initiative, and also that you guys are closely collaborating with it, which I think for parts of the audience today might be very interesting, something to look up, especially if they're curious about landing in Berlin from Asia. Great. Thank you all for sharing that. Maybe just to quickly summarize, I love the points that you mentioned. We kind of went from, in general, being able to have access to talent, as well as also access to other ecosystem using Berlin. You also touched based on culture. I feel like what many people who would have not experienced Berlin yet don't know is that it's primarily within the startups, an English-speaking ecosystem, and the diversity in cultures is also a few of you already pointed out is very, very wide and very broad. So you're able to really connect and find the right people from your environments as well. Great, but maybe to now try to sink a little bit deeper, as now we took, let's say, a very focused view of Berlin as an ecosystem. Maybe if we take just one step back and see how do we see Berlin connecting to the rest of the Europe. So especially Marina, you mentioned using, European or Schengen region for your business or for your company as a big advantage. How well do you see Berlin being integrated within the other European ecosystems, or within the other European countries perhaps, or cities predominantly? Maybe Marina, from your experience of using the
Well, there is like this network of European startups. Like, for example, last year we did the Startup Sesame program, which is an event of events, and they choose select startups that can get the access to all these events throughout the year. So that was like a big European network of events, and throughout that that was actually a very good thing to do, to kind of see the whole Europe as our market and not really look in as one country at the time.
And do you see a language between, Europe as, let's say, even if we look just at European Union and not the Europe as a whole, as an entity, has many different cultures and languages. Have you seen that as a big barrier so far?
I think for me that I notice is English is usually the language. And in one advantage in Berlin is that you can manage very far only with English. I do speak German, but not on a business level, but it actually helps sometimes to hear the conversations of some other people to kind of know what's happening in the room. And it's always a nice gesture to learn the language, but in Europe there's so many languages, so kind of which one will you then choose? So English is the main thing that brings very far.
Perfect. Maybe before I proceed with a similar question further, one more to you, Marina, regarding, for example, you mentioned this Startup Sesame. Have you also encountered other communities or used other communities within Europe in order to get connected within other hubs, for example?
Well, one very practical thing is co-working. So from Betahaus, there is the one co-work from Christoph, and so we have used that. So whenever we travel in other cities, we get from that app the co-working location, and through that then we get to know other people in that like workday environment and so on. Yeah. So that's another example.
Note, we have not sponsored Marina to share that information as part of her answer, but thank you for sharing that. And maybe to proceed with a similar question, Elena, to you guys, how have you seen, you mentioned a little bit about the different culture between organizing an event in Paris compared to Berlin. I can imagine Spain or a few other locations that might also be quite diverse in there. But have you seen any barriers like language or culture when you're entering a new, let's say, city in Europe with data natives?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking of my answer before based on also what you asked Marina, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
The thing with Europe and the thing also with Berlin, I feel like every kind of conversation like that ends becoming like a love letter to Berlin, you know, because it's like Berlin is such a cool place. And a lot of the times what I notice is that our connections with the ecosystem in Europe or worldwide, it's also affiliated with people that we meet here that might come from these regions. So you get a first, let's say, entry to the market in a way through ambassador network, whether you meet them in real life in Berlin or they're part online of the community and they want to support. And essentially that's the easiest way to start doing events or start doing activities and bridging ecosystems and communities. But I also think to the other point is that, and I've noticed a lot, something that also Alex mentioned is basically how even from a position in Berlin, you connect with other ecosystems through these bridges between, let's say, Asia, Berlin, where you're creating this connection and the bond between the ecosystem here in Asia. And similarly, there's all this, like betahaus, for example, you have offices around the world. So there's a bridge that creates kind of network effect, which is also this, how we call it, like multipliers, right? So people who are becoming like your own like echo to the ecosystem. So I would say, just to summarize it, like on one hand, the ambassador network, where you meet people from the location and they are the ones who are connecting you to that specific location, or essentially an existing place which is already connected with this location, where they also make that bridge. So I'm not sure if it's cultural necessarily, but definitely that melting pot that I think also actually Alex mentioned is very important to do these connections even from within Berlin.
Very nice. Thank you for elaborating that. And especially, I love what you said about this coming back to, you know, meeting those people already in Berlin or meeting those ambassadors organizations already here. I fully agree with that from my experience as well. Alex, how is it from your side? Perhaps in here, we're maybe a little bit limiting your guys' scope within Europe, but how has your experience with Enpact been there so far?
I'd like to take a step back and think of, from the startup perspective, how do you choose your next market where you go to? Because if we look at Europe, Germany is the biggest economy. So we may be taking even about the different cities and locations within Germany that you can look at as a potential market if you are in any type of B2B business, automotive, chemical, or maybe even insurtech, which is quite picking up now in Germany overall. And then Berlin is one of the obvious candidates within Germany because it is where there's 60% of the venture capital is going to startups based in Germany. There is a vibrant ecosystem. There's a lot of support network, even though on the couple of conferences I had a back and forth with the other German states who are saying, no, you should come to us because we have all the industry sitting there, which is also fair enough. And as a startup, you should consider and go to where your clients are. If you are, for example, in music industry or gaming, you might as well look at Stockholm because this is where there is so much talent and know-how already there. Or food tech is another thing that's really growing in Sweden these days. So I would say it's great to have these local connections, but you first need to do the very dry analysis of the numbers, look, and then start testing your assumptions where you would find a product market fit with your products or service that you have.
Mm-hmm. Such a great bridge you've done here. I feel like you almost a bit done my job as well. Like so far we spoke about general, like really about this, how does the ecosystem even look like, who, what are the key advantages of it? But our topic is also focusing actually on B2B organizations or startups, as well as maybe scale-ups looking to bridge within Europe. So maybe coming to my last cluster of questions, which is relating to what would be your key advice for to a B2B organization or a startup or a scale-up looking into bridging or coming into Europe. What would be your key advice for them on where to start or how to start navigating within the European ecosystem? And maybe now we flip the orders. Alex, you really so nicely opened the topic up. Perhaps you would like to continue with it?
Yeah, maybe a couple of things to add to that. Think about the cost of expansion, because even though it might be the most promising market for you in Europe, a special country, say Germany or Italy, France, it might be way more expensive to go to a German market, and you might want to test it out somewhere else first and then roll out by changing language and adjusting certain features. Think about the culture of the consumers, because, for example, electronic payments, card payments are not still widely accepted in Germany, unfortunately. I'm right now in Stockholm, and I've been here for the past 3 months, and I have not touched cash for 3 months. This would be a challenge. Let's put it this way. This would be a challenge in Berlin. So yeah, I'm sure I'll come up with more ideas. Let's keep going.
Sounds good. Sorry, I put you directly on the spot there. It's a little bit bridge, but I would love to come back to you in case you have something else to add to that point. Maybe, Elena, you're in lucky middle. Either way, I turn the tables around, you end up in the lucky middle. But perhaps from your perspective, especially maybe talking about B2B organizations that might use big data or be fitting within the vertical of big data, what would your advice be for them looking into enter the European ecosystem?
What would be the right place for them, you mean? What would be the right location to choose? Or
as well, I would love to extend to that. I have to say I didn't really include that in the question, but now that you pointed it out, I feel like it's really interesting to get your perspective on that as well. I was more aiming for a general, key advices that you would have. So for example, if you would talk to a startup right now coming, let's say from Korea, what would be the key advice that you would like to give them before entering European?
Yeah, so I have I've changed my mind a little bit about B2B lately. So I have a bit of a controversial point of view, which is one of those things that you drop and then you haven't really thought it that much through. So it just sounds like a statement, but there's a lot of it behind it. But no, I was making like a dramatic entrance to the topic. But essentially, I was thinking that right now, I think that one thing I realized with COVID-19 is that everything is no longer B2B. Actually, nothing is B2B. Everything is B2B2C. So, because the same way that, let's say, Apple revolutionized the personal computation, like, and everybody could have your own computer. I think now we're entering a phase where essentially that device can be, you can turn your product from a B2B to a B2C pretty easily. But that's besides the point. So I just wanted to say that's kind of broad. I think that what I'm going to say applies to any kind of company. But essentially, the rule that I would say, if you are from outside Europe and coming from a very different culture, is of course for me the rule of thumb is definitely get some people who can guide you in, at least from an administrative point of view, right? As soon as you make up your mind of where you want to go, of course. So once you decide where you want to go and why, and that why should be tied in with the industry that you're in, the market that you're targeting, why you decided to target that market. So first you do your business research and decide on like where strategically would make most sense for you to expand. But once you enter that market, then of course the first thing for me would be get the right person in to climatize you, someone who can help you by hiring people that would be a bridge to your company culture and to, because a company culture is not only based on the culture of the location, it's a company culture. It can be also international. So hiring people that could help you first with admin, second with like this cultural bridge and gap. And of course, I think Marina already mentioned it, like the best way to get familiar with the ecosystem, to get a foot at the door, is also to start engaging with activities in this ecosystem. So Startup Sesame is good for startups, for example, to help them getting a selection of good events, getting a first impression of what events are in Europe for your industry that would be relevant for you, right? If you have big data or data science as a main key driver in your business, then of course you need to consider events that they would cater to this audience, and they would help you find your first customers or partners, and would give you like also a very quick overview of the market, and yeah, I think those are the three main things for me. So A, business, decide like where you need to go. B, so from a business perspective, business development. B, HR and admin stuff. And then C, events / community building. So
Perfect. Very well summarized. I have to say, at the beginning of your answer, you really, I think, opened a very good topic and a bit of a Pandora box for future discussions. I think this is something we should talk about, organizing a panel just on that. How do we move from this asset to stakeholders, so to say, within the organizations? Thank you very also for practically summarizing the tips for the companies listening that might be looking forward to. I hope you took notes there. Marina, are the startupper in the group, what from your perspective would be the advice for the organizations outside of Europe trying to come or conquer certain markets within Europe?
To add to the earlier very good comments, I would say that what we have learned is that it's good to go to the startup events. That's more for investment and looking for that and getting to know the ecosystem. But for getting the customers and the leads in B2B environment, the best places have been the most very badly branded industry events. So they're kind of seen as boring, but they have been the best because there are many people, decision makers and people who work there, and few startups. And when you go to the startup events, it's full of startups, and then there is only some random people from the industries. So, and I mean, we work in media industry and so on, so it depends what is the field you're working on exactly. But for us, we have had some very amazing experiences in these industry events that some people advise us not to go to, but we went there and we were happily surprised.
Amazing. I love how you positioned it. I have to say, I saw just the faces of Elena and Alex, and we were all like, yep, we've seen those badly branded events. Yep.
but it goes to this philosophy that you never know who the person is you talk to, and it also goes to that about the events. You never know, like you cannot be too like looking for something and only talking and approaching people that you think that will give you something or will give you the thing that you're looking for, because you never know. And that's actually the fun thing about this startup adventure, is to kind of just doing these things.
Not knowing where you're going to end up. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Maybe to dive a little bit more within exactly a topic on like how to best establish those connections, or how to actually, maybe even to start with, how do you choose where you should actually focus or place your focus at, or spend your time in to test. So all three of you actually also mentioned the idea of really testing whether does your product or what your business is doing even has a role within specific markets in Europe you're looking at, and perhaps to maybe even add to that, like also, even though Europe is quite of a small, let's say geographically small and easily accessible, it is diverse, and it offers certain connections. However, you cannot be in 10 countries at the same time, can you? So also to be maybe a little bit more strategic on where do you start, like as Alex also mentioned, to think from the cost perspective, or from Elena's point of view from the talent perspective, and gathering that access in the right way. So perhaps to take maybe a step deeper there, if we think about choosing which type of either those are events or those are communities that it makes sense for you to sort of engage with in order to enhance or to identify whether your startup has a role there. What has been from your experience, how best to curate this within the B2B world? For example, maybe if I share some from the betahaus side, we have seen a lot of those startup theater innovation corporate events to also purpose-driven innovation events. And maybe Marina, specifically to you, as you already mentioned, this badly branded but purpose-driven events that have proven to be very useful. Do you have maybe a suggestion or a tip to our audience how they could see the difference, or better identify the right stakeholders within that community or engagement?
Yeah, I think it goes from finding the people who are running who are opinion leaders in the industry or somehow then following them. Like one event we found from a newsletter I was following of a person that I had met somewhere. So it's kind of getting to that, but to like how to test your product with companies. Our experience was that we did the acceleration program in Hamburg, and that their idea was that they connect the startups with the media companies, and we have this, they call it easy testing. We get to work closely with the media companies and test and bounce the idea. So that was also for us a very good learning and led to very good partnerships and so on.
Perfect. So we're like focusing on these programs that are sort of more, let's say, that have exactly what the customers that you might be looking for.
Yes, and I would say that in Germany, it's important that you know some people who open the doors for you. So if you would have just come here without any connections, it would have been different. Now through the accelerator, we knew that like that will open some doors, and that was the idea.
Perfect. Maybe a great bridge, Alex, back to you, as you already opened the topic, especially in Germany with specific verticals that are quite strongly developed and have a strong also industry presence here. What would be from your perspective, let's say, a tip for the organizations coming over or looking to come over? How can they actually access this type of large industry?
I definitely agree with Marina. It is very important to attend the industry conferences, maybe reach out to the chambers of commerce, and both abroad and in Germany. They can be a great help, and they have access to the German Mittelstand, to these family enterprises that are hidden champions of the German economy, and potentially can also connect you to them. I would strongly suggest following Asia Berlin and attending Asia Berlin Summit, because we do have quite a number of both Berlin city officials and support of the SAP and Siemens as long-lasting partners for this summit. So they also offered some connections already when you attend. I would say it's a long process, and if you need to start planning it a couple of years before you make the decision to actually move, to start building the networks, to start getting to know the people, and preparing the ground for the very soft landing rather than figuring it out the hard way, I would say.
Perfect. Very well summarized. Thank you for sharing that. Elena, maybe the final also to you. From your perspective, you guys really navigate within data natives, a wide, also different type of organizations within your communities. But if you would, again, focus maybe just on the B2B ones, what would be your suggestion to them on how best to access or engage their future customers?
I think actually, I think I'm just gonna summarize what the other two panelists already said. I like how Marina,
all the startups listening, take notes.
I like how Marina put it, like badly branded, but fairly focused. I'm not sure what the problem is there. Maybe that the target audience does not like good branding. anyway, it could be the issue, but definitely goal-oriented and purpose-driven to facilitate this kind of connections. Yeah, I think also Alex mentioned any event, like Asian Berlin event that has a very clear purpose to connect actually to ecosystem would be a good starting point for anyone looking into. And I have to agree as well that when you are looking at entering a market, it does take some time to prepare properly. I mean, the 3 steps that I mentioned, they're not just easy peasy steps. Like, it would take some time to do your research, to actually even go to different markets to see if that's the right fit for you. So look at different events, and of course, like, have your own, let's say, small MVP as to why and how you will enter a market, right? You will not just enter a market without having a first client there anyway. So if you are to enter a market, you need to have a strong reason behind it. So you need to get your first customers there, and then see how many customers make sense for you to enter the market. before you move and relocate and start offices there. Because I mean, right now it's such a global environment, so it's not necessary for someone to open a market, to open an office, unless they're looking for specifically for talent in the area, or the industry that they're focusing in is very strong in the specific location, or they use the location as as Marina put it, as the Schengen opener, so the place where for Europe, right, for the whole European market. So certainly research the right events, and that is by trial and error, and that would give you definitely like the first customers. And luckily we've got the internet these days, so even before an event you can get some customers, or at least have some first discussions, right? And know if your product is the right fit for the market you want to enter, or you've got the right customers there.
Perfect. Wow, I love it. Like literally bullet point after bullet point. Very nicely done. Touch base. So we're slowly coming to an end. We had a bit of a delay in start, therefore they allowed us to go a little bit longer. But before I maybe switch to the closing words, we do have one question within the Q&A, which so I'll just read it through. So Berlin's entrepreneurship ranking has dropped down from 10 to 16 in the past couple of years, according to Global Entrepreneurship Report. Can you guess why? My darling panelists, would any of you dare to tackle this question?
Not enough currywurst.
Not enough currywurst, that's a good one.
Do I dare to say that there should be a big airport?
That probably really has to do something about it.
I think I would say that there are also other cities becoming very good places, like Tallinn in Estonia and all these. So there is a lot of competition. So yeah, but still, I prefer Berlin.
So Berlin's statement, it's poor but sexy, is slowly also losing its charm, and people are also, I guess, also asking for others. Alex, do you have any follow-up to the question about Berlin losing its rank on the Global Entrepreneurship Report?
I mean, I think Berlin is becoming more expensive, and especially with the housing crisis that's maybe not crisis yet, but is brewing. The housing prices are increasing rapidly, and the infrastructure is not being modernized as fast as it is in some other European cities. And I guess maybe our internet speeds have something to do with that. That would be my take at it, but please tell us, what do you know about this?
So from my perspective, I fully agree with what was shared so far. And I feel like also, Alex, what you mentioned before, the fintech industry in Germany is not on its most innovative way, as well as few other technical. And I can imagine that some other ecosystems that are on the uprise, especially from smaller, perhaps countries, are definitely gathering their strengths and therefore enforcing rather the connections. Great. So with that, our time is more or less up. So before we fully close off and leave the meeting room, I would just like to quickly summarize to our participants and what we discussed and what were the inputs that we heard from our three panelists. So we spoke a little bit about overall European ecosystem and Berlin as a base where we're all personally coming from at the moment, at least, or our organizations have used as a base in order to expand further. We have identified the importance of cultures, access to talent, as well as access to other locations within Europe, as Berlin being quite centrally positioned within the map, and also affordability in both living costs, at least for now, so somewhat comparable to large cities, to other large cities in Europe, but especially in terms of travel connections to other cities. Then we dived a little bit deeper on the role of communities and how they play or they use the diverse ecosystem here. And then at the end, we dived, let's say, into most details how your organization as a B2B organization can use those in order to access specific areas. In here, just again to highlight, Elena has listed very nicely the points where you should keep in mind, what all of the panelists have also shared, but just to highlight, first test whether which market in Europe is good for you to start with, assure that you already have certain traction or certain testing that you can do online. Use the online environment, especially now thanks to Corona, you can actually get even more access than before. Think about where would you like to start, the cost of expansions. Think about access to talent there, as well as, of course, how much traction within your the potential customers you already have, and start researching a list of communities or multipliers or ambassadors that you're able to rely upon to keep on opening those doors for you. As Marina also highlighted from their experience, engaging within specific industry-focused events, for example, or going for specific programs that are targeted within your types of organization can be a great door opener for you. Great. So with that, I would really like to thank each of you. So Elena, Alex, and Marina, it has truly been a pleasure talking to you. I would have hoped that in the future we get to sit down and perhaps we open the topic that Elena opened up, which is no more B2B, but B2B2C. Really interested about that one, as well as many other points that you share. Thank you again for your time and for your energy and all of the tips that you have shared. And hopefully we get to cross-collaborate even more as communities and also as supporters of generally of entrepreneurship and development of tech in Europe.
Thank you.
Iva.
Perfect. Have a lovely day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference and hopefully see you once in person in Berlin in the future. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the Beta House panel. I'm Josephine, part of the organizing team of Startup Impact Summit. Thank you so much for joining the International and GBA stage on day one. We've heard many key insights from key players across GBA, Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, just to name a couple of them. Of course, from Europe as well, London and Germany, which you've just heard. So I just want to thank you again for sticking around. And as a perk, in a way to thank you, I'd like to invite you to download our GBA white paper and our Hong Kong Startup Ecosystem white paper, which you can get access to at WHub.io/insights. So definitely download those for free. That is invaluable resources that many insights, and like you can get many tips from there as well. So just a reminder, tune in tomorrow for more Hong Kong Startup Ecosystem insights. We'll get to hear about funding opportunities from Hong Kong Productivity Council. Hong Kong TDC Startup Express winners will be presenting their demo days and pitches, and many more panels from Invest Hong Kong. So thank you again. See you tomorrow, bright and early. Have a good evening, guys. Thank you.